LinkedIn presents.
For all of us, it's about predicting where the consumer is going and getting half of it right.
One of the things we want to do is create ads that don't suck.
Embracing change creates great possibility.
I'm Alan Hart, and this is Marketing Today. On the show today, I've got Zach Kitschke. He's the CMO of Canva, the online visual communication collaboration platform with a mission to empower the whole world to design. Since launching in 2013, Canva has grown to over 130 million users each month in over 190 countries around the world, with more than 13 billion designs created. On the show today, we talk about the new report they've released, the Visual Economy. It was an insights report from 1,600 global business leaders on how they're using visual content to build stronger audience engagement. And we talk about what stood out from that report. We also talk about how visual content fits into our world today. It seems to be everywhere, omnipresent, and how to stand out in that mix of what's going on in the world, as well as Canva, their approach to go to market in terms of who they sell to, the complexity as it relates to the various types of users that they have, how they approach their own marketing, and a recent campaign entitled What Will You Design Today? So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Zach Kitschke. Zach, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It's not every day you get to interview something as, in my world, as widely known as your product. So I'm looking forward to talking about the company and the product itself and what you guys are doing. But before we get into all that, I hear you are expecting a new addition to the family soon.
We have a baby girl on the way, not too far from now.
Is it your first?
It'll be my first, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I am a girl dad myself, so
are you?
Yeah, prepare for your heart to be melted. It's an amazing experience in general, but I think girls and dads, there's something kind of magical there.
That's what I hear.
So you're in for a special treat. Well, awesome. Congrats. And I hope all the best for you guys as that gets closer and closer to rocking your world in the greatest way ever. So
thank you.
Well, where did you get your start? You are now the chief marketing officer at Canva, but where'd you get your start, and how'd you end up as CMO?
It's an interesting story. I think, like so many people, you have maybe a bit of a plan, and life takes you in all sorts of unexpected directions. My journey really started when I was growing up. I grew up in a small town just outside of Sydney, a place called Wollongong. And so I went to school down there, and I'd long had this dream to be a journalist. So, all through high school, I was obsessed with news and politics, and did sort of work experience in the local radio station and newspapers and all sorts of things like that. So the plan was I'd finish high school and go and study journalism. But unexpectedly, right sort of at the end of my exams, my mum was actually flicking through the local newspaper, and there was these series of ads from the local council of all places, and they were advertising these cadetships that they were offering, and basically the deal was you could get a full-time job in sort of business or planning, a whole range of different fields, and they would employ you full-time, but also pay for you to go to university or school. And so I ended up throwing my hat in the ring, thinking at worst it's some sort of good interview experience, but then ended up getting offered a cadetship. And so sort of went back to the drawing board and decided to take that as sort of a way to get my degree paid for at that point and get some experience. So that was sort of the start of the journey back then.
Yeah. Did you know at that early time anything about marketing or was it just more like business and general business, if you will?
I'd say the sort of aspect of marketing that drew me was really the communication side. And so it was at council that I ended up, making the leap into a communications role. And so I think for me at that point, it was a bit of a step towards this journalism path that I'd really wanted. So
Right.
I took the cadetship, and a little while in, I was fortunate that they gave me an opportunity to spend some time in the media and comms team at council. So I sort of cut my teeth in a communications role there, which I'd say was my my first introduction to the broad world of marketing.
Love it. And then when did Canva come into play? Because you've been at the company, I think, since 2013. Is that right?
I have, yeah. So I lasted a couple years at council, and that was a great
Mm.
experience. Having the opportunity to spend time in communications and corporate planning and HR and things like that. But I'm sure, as you can imagine, as a 21-year-old with a few years in local government, I was looking for greener pastures and something a bit more fast moving and exciting. And I'd been following along the stories of the startup scene that was emerging at that point in time. So
Mm.
I was sort of looking for an opportunity, and found a job up in Sydney. So I made the move and took a job editing a news website covering this emerging startup ecosystem in Australia. So that was really great. I did that for a few months, but that, like many startups, I guess, ended up folding. And so I was
Right.
desperately out of work. And it was at that point that I got introduced to Mel and Cliff, and my sort of Canva story started.
It's awesome. And what were you doing in 2013 when you first started? Because it's hard to think back 10 years ago, frankly.
The first thing I did was actually a day's contract work. So Mel and Cliff weren't really hiring at that point in time. But after hearing what they were up to, and their vision, and what they were trying to kind of do with this platform, they were hoping would transform the world of design. I was certainly inspired, and knew that I wanted to be part of it. So I did everything I could to talk my way in, and they ended up saying, "Come in for a day, and let's see how it goes." So the first thing I worked on was actually a media release for our very first funding announcement back in 2013.
Mm. I love that. Love that. And it's not every day that you hear somebody that took a day job to then earn their right to come back the next day. So I'm guessing the release was pretty good.
It
Hit
must
the
have been
mark.
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, awesome. I mean, so now CMO, it looks like you've got pretty much the full marketing stack, so to speak. Like, is that true? Like, you've got product marketing, PR, comms, performance marketing, content marketing, and brand as well. I'm sure I've missed a number of things, but it sounds like it's pretty full, comprehensive CMO role.
Yeah. Yeah. When I took the role on about 3 years ago now, the Canva was obviously growing, and we had an amazing product, but I'd say our marketing was quite nascent. And so the challenge was, let's stand up a marketing organization and really figure out how to grow Canva's brand and awareness. And so at that point in
Mhm.
time, we didn't have a creative team. We had no product marketing. We had no brand marketing. So it was definitely a build, but we very intentionally built that as sort of one marketing organization through to today.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I know. Let's talk a little bit more about the business. And one of the things that caught my eye is you recently released a report called the Visual Economy Report. If I get this right, it was insights from around 1,600 different global business leaders that you guys surveyed around how they're using visual content to build stronger audience engagement. And it looks fantastic, but I'm curious, like, just as you think about the report itself and what you've learned, like, what stood out to you that people should be thinking about?
Well, look, anecdotally, I think we all know that the world has become more visual. And
Mhm.
when Canva launched, we launched at a time when Facebook was just starting to prioritize images in the newsfeed. Tablets had just hit the market. High speed internet was sort of being rolled out, for more parts of the world. And so the growth of those platforms then has really accelerated and continued today. And I think we're now living in a world that is even more visual and more fast moving than ever before. The some of the channels that we all consume now. TikTok commands more hours of viewership than TV in the US. Today, there's literally billions of images and hundreds of thousands of hours of video being shared each and every day online. And so I think what that has meant is that for brands and organizations, visual communication has become really paramount. So I think we all anecdotally know that, but it was really interesting from the report and the research that we did, seeing some validation of that. So, over 85% of business leaders agreed that visual communication not only increases efficiency, but it enhances collaboration and it gets more cut through. And I think there's been this real acknowledgement that it's now not just the creative team in an organization, but it's everyone that needs to be able to communicate visually. We're all creators in one way or another these days. And so one thing that really jumped out to me was that design skills are really a non-negotiable. It was over half of business leaders, it's more than 60%, said that employees in non-design roles, they now expected them to have extensive design abilities, which really just talks to that shift that we've seen, I think, in the past decade.
Yeah, no, I mean, that one stuck out to me as well. Like the fact that design skills are non-negotiable, and the notion that everyone can be a creator and probably should be in some level inside of a company. I mean, it definitely changes how marketers or marketing organizations have to think about content. And I'm guessing, like, how do we enable that such that people can find their way there, right, to doing those types of things? Do you agree with that, or is it you look at it differently?
No, I agree with that. And I think we've all seen it in our personal lives, right? Like the creator economy
Right.
has absolutely exploded, and that's been fueled by the technology, and people are creating content in all sorts of formats in their personal lives, and that's really come through into the workplace and organizations now as well. I think one of the interesting things with Canva is we launched 10 years ago. We've now got 130 million people using the platform each and every month. But often what we see is that it's individuals that are creating content or using presentations or social graphics or video content in order to do their job and do things faster, better, more impactfully internally. And so you sort of see that in terms of this bottoms up adoption in organizations, because people are used to creating in this way in their personal lives. And so it is this real shift in the way that people are working and communicating.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I mean, and as I think about it, it's kind of daunting to think about a little bit. Like, it's no surprise that we've become more visually dominant, but it also means there's a lot of content being created. I don't know that this was part of your report, but I'm curious if you've got thoughts on, like, how do you stand out in a sea of visual content? Some good and some really bad, obviously, but like, so you can always stand out by making good content, but there's a lot of good content out there too.
Look, I think that there are marketing organizations are being pressured to create more content to fuel the demand. And so we've seen this absolute increase in the volume of content that's required across many, many, many channels. In the past, you'd produce a spot for TV and maybe an out-of-home asset, and that was it. And these days, you're producing, in some cases, like dozens of pieces of content a day. And so the volume that's required has completely changed. I think what that has meant is that the way that we think about creation of content and maintaining a brand has shifted as well now. And so what we see, a lot more of is the ability to create being in more people's hands. But what that actually means for an organization is the need to really provide guardrails and templates and sort of guidelines in a way that more people are able to consume. You'd be amazed to hear how many organizations still have sort of archaic processes around things like brand guidelines. The poor creative team spend all of this time lovingly creating a brand And then it gets handed over to the organization in a 200-page PDF brand book that literally no one no one can use. And it sort of atrophies and work ends up off brand, or sort of the guidelines end up being ignored. And so I think that's really what the opportunity today is. If with more people with the skills and the ability to create, how do you actually give them the tools and empower them to be able to create in a way that's on brand?
You bring up a really interesting point about the brand, the age-old brand book, and I never made this connection. But I'm curious if you think about Canva in this way. Are you guys the living, breathing ecosystem of a brand, or could you be? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean that's what we recently launched the Canva Brand Hub, which brings that together. So you've got everyone in an organization that's actually creating content there in Canva, because they find the tool easy and they're able to do the job that they're trying to do. But then we're also able to bring the living, breathing guidelines into that same place, so that the creative team within an organization can actually maintain those guidelines in a way that everyone can consume.
Love it. And I hadn't thought about that use case before, but that makes perfect sense. Well, you mentioned 130 million users. How do you think about who you serve or who you sell to? Because it feels like everyone could be your customer, which is super complex too, if I think about that too hard.
We have a very clear mission at Canva, which is to empower the world to design. And that's the mission we've been working towards since we launched. And when we say the world, we mean the whole world. So we do really think that every single person has a need to communicate visually and express themselves. And so it is a very, very wide community of people on the platform. Everyone from small businesses trying to build their business and get themselves off the ground, students and teachers in the classroom, the Fortune 500 organizations trying to deploy their brand and unlock creation at scale. So it is a very, very broad user base. We're also very global as well. So we've got people using the platform, 130 million people each and every month in over 190 countries. So the platform is available in 100 different languages. So it's a very broad community for sure.
Those are amazing stats. 190 countries, 100 different languages. That's like complexity on steroids. Not to mention just the various types of users. What enables you guys to harness that complexity? Like usually complexity in business is seen as a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
But you must hold a secret somewhere in what you guys been able to build.
For us, everything starts with the products, and it always has done so. And so, I think at the time when Canva launched, prior to us launching, Mel, our CEO, was actually teaching design software while studying at school. And so, as a part-time job, she'd teach other students how to use tools like Photoshop and InDesign and things like that. And this was around the time that Facebook was taking off and tablets were emerging, and this new technology was opening up new possibilities in other domains. And so I guess to her, it just seemed crazy that design software still literally came in a box, and
Right.
would cost thousands of dollars to purchase, and then would take months and months to learn just how to use the functionality of the tool. And so I guess that was where we identified this huge gap in the market. The vast majority of people that didn't have access to the tools, we had this belief that no matter your income or where you live or your skill level, you too should be able to design. And so really set out to build a product that served for all of those people. And I think that focus on product has really continued to this day. And so we have always focused on how do we build the simplest possible experience that empowers anyone, no matter their age, no matter their skill, no matter where they are in the world, to actually create.
Love it. I love it. So from the product doing a good bit of the heavy lifting in terms of harnessing the complexity, how do you guys, like as the head of product marketing, head of marketing, how do you approach marketing? Like what are the elements, if you will, that you focus on the most?
So I guess for us, it always starts with the product,
Hmm.
as I mentioned, and people come to Canva because they're looking to achieve a particular goal. It's to teach a better class or get their small business off the ground or deliver a creative more effectively. And so everyone, whether you're an individual or a Fortune 500, is coming to Canva with a goal. And so we often start with that in mind with our marketing. Our latest campaign actually just launched recently in the
Yeah.
US. And as an example, with that campaign, we've really focused in on the breadth of the product experience. One
Mhm.
complexity we have with a product that does do so much is people will often have discovered us for a particular use case. So
Mhm.
they may love us for presentations, or they may have used us a lot for video, or maybe invitations. But oftentimes, people are surprised to discover the breadth of what the product can do. So with the
Yeah.
latest campaign, we have really showcased our Canva visual suite, and all of the spots and the creative centers around those different offerings that we have. So that's one example sort of out in the market there that's really about showing people what you can do with Canva in terms of whiteboarding and brainstorming, what you can do with Canva in terms of building a website, what you can do in terms of creating video content, and so on.
Gotcha. And I mean, it sounds like I don't know how much you ascribe to a marketing philosophy, or you have your own way of doing things. But it sounds a lot like trying to find entry points for consumers to have an on ramp to your product, and maybe think about you in a new way or a new need that they're trying to solve for. Is that the easiest way to think about it? I don't know if that how you're thinking about it, or maybe it's just coming from the pure education standpoint.
Look, I'd say it is definitely about finding that entry point. One unique thing about Canva is because we're focused so heavily on the product experience, word of mouth
Mhm.
is our largest driver of growth. So most of our traffic comes from people literally telling others about the platform, and that's been something that's been really important, for us to maintain and make sure that our product continues to meet that bar. And so we know once people discover and use one of our products that they will tell other people about it.
Mm.
And so I think for us, when we think about marketing, it's really about how do we introduce Canva to more people. I said earlier, our mission is to empower the whole world to design. That means we've got a few billion people to go yet. So the challenge for us is really how do we get Canva into as many people's hands and I guess
Mm.
hearts and minds as possible, and really show how the product can help with their needs.
No, I think by my count, it would be something like 6.8 billion people to go. Something like that. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
moving target, isn't
It
it?
is. It is. It is. It probably just changed as I said that. But yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, I know. I mean, you mentioned like the user base and community seems to be a big piece of your marketing mix too. Like just you've got a pretty active user base in
Yeah.
general, and that must contribute to the word of mouth you just mentioned as well. Do you foster anything related to the community, like, or is it just natural and organic in that respect? So just curious if you amplify it anyway.
We think about community in a few ways. I'd say what it really comes back to for us is Canva in people's conversations. We're incredibly fortunate today that there are literally thousands of small business owners sharing tips and tricks.
Mm.
There are social media marketers producing tutorial content on TikTok and YouTube. There are teachers swapping Canva lesson plans. We have this incredible community that's really growing around the world. But as I said, community for us really comes back to this question, are we in people's conversations? And I guess over the years, we've figured out this litmus test to help us answer that question. And it's simple. It's basically, how likely are you to recommend Canva to a friend or coworker? And we really started to use that question actually before we launched back in 2013 with a product called usertesting.com. I'm sure if you've heard of it, but it's a fantastic product. And basically what you can do is get real people to engage with your product. So if you're a e-commerce platform, as an example, you get someone to go through the checkout experience and see how they find it. If you're a travel website, go through and book a trip, or in our case, go and create a design. And so prior to launch, we actually put our very first iteration of Canva on usertesting.com. And let me tell you, if you want to feel good about yourself, don't ask people what they think. But the insights that came back were so invaluable. And actually that led us to delay our launch in those early days to refine some aspects of our user interface, simple things like UI or our onboarding experience and things like that. But what it meant was by the time we launched, we knew that we would be getting consistent 9s or 10s to that question about recommending Canva to a friend or coworker. And so even today, we still put our product, anything new that we're building, or even our marketing creative and campaigns through that same process. And what it means is that we know we've met a bar where whatever we're putting out there is simple enough to understand. It's easy enough that people are not just going to enjoy using the product, but enjoy it enough that they'll be inspired to share with others. And ultimately, I think that is what has fueled community.
Awesome. I love that. And you mentioned the campaign that launched. I'm assuming that's the one entitled "What Will You Design Today?"
That's right. Yeah.
That's right. Okay. And how it sounds very educational, very, like we talked about, providing those on ramps for use cases that you might not have been thinking about as it relates to Canva. How's it going so far? I think you launched mid last year or something like that.
Really, really well.
Yeah.
We it's sort of I think it's the third kind of iteration of what will you design today. So the sort of stories obviously evolved as we've grown, but we've seen some really incredible uptake of the new products that we launched in September last year that we heroed, to things like websites and whiteboards. We also recently rolled out a suite of AI tools across our work suite that we're calling magic features. And so they've been incredibly popular as well. Things like being able to describe the design that you'd like generated, and will automatically create design options for you, generate the perfect image from a text prompt, automatically edit your video to a audio track and things like that. So our community were incredibly excited to get their hands on all of those new features. So it's been great to be able to share them with the world through the campaign too.
Awesome. Well, congrats on what you guys are doing at the business. I mean, it's working. It's working. And only 6.8 billion more people to go. So a lot of upside.
We're not going to run out of things to do anytime soon.
No, exactly. So one of the things we love to do on this show is get to know you a little bit better. We know you got a new addition that's coming to the family. But my favorite question to ask everyone that comes on the show is, what experience of your past defines or makes up who you are today?
One of the things that shaped me was my grandparents. They were immigrants to Australia from the US, so moved over here with their family. My mum would have been maybe 10 or 11 at that point in time. So, a huge move for a young family at that point. And growing up, they just had this tremendous focus on the importance of education. And I think that really extended to me. And they would always send us books every Christmas, would indulge the things that I was interested in. There was a phase where I was really into photography, and taking me to buy books or play around with cameras and things like that back then. But it extended through school as well. So my parents didn't have a lot growing up, and so my grandparents offered, I remember, to put me through music, and so they said you can choose to learn any instrument that you want, and we'll cover the cost of lessons. So I chose to play the saxophone growing up, and they supported me through school as well. And I think what it definitely taught me was the importance of your own motivation to drive. I never had any pressure from my parents, my grandparents, to get a certain grade or to study at a certain time every day or anything like that. And so I think by focusing on the things that I was interested in and wanted to explore and being incredibly generous with their support, it really gave me an appreciation for the value of some of those things, but also I think really kickstarted a curiosity and a real love of learning, which I think continues today, and is one of the things I love most about Canva and the role I'm in. It's a constant learning experience.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. And what a great gift to somehow inspire a lifelong love or curiosity and learning. That's amazing. Great people. What advice would you give your younger self if you were starting this journey all over again?
Probably the one thing I would share is something I think maybe a lot of young people experience, which is this desire for things to move more quickly. I think there's always an urgency. You want to be doing the next thing, or in my case, like there's a great example at the council of, at that point in time, as I said, it was like the time when Facebook and social platforms were taking off. And I remember just pitching that we should have a Facebook page and should be on social media, because that's where our community was. And I remember being put through committee after committee and having to write all these long reports on why it was a good idea and how we'd manage all the risks and all this sort of stuff. And of course, it went nowhere. And being kind of 18, 19 at that point, I just couldn't understand why something that seemed so obvious just wouldn't happen in sort of a bureaucracy. And so I think then wanted to sort of move to the startup world and sort of move to Sydney and things like that. But I'd say, sometimes things move in sort of mysterious ways, and what feels like it's taking a long time at the time, in hindsight, the path sort of takes you in the direction that you need to go. And it's sort of those experiences, I think, being frustrated in council, that led me to make the move to the startup role and find my way into that world. And so it's sort of, I think there's these kind of signposts, but just sort of going along with the ride a bit more, and sort of being open to where that takes you would probably be the big thing.
I love that. I love it. And just it takes as long as it takes.
Yeah, exactly.
Essentially. Yeah. Yeah. Well, is there a topic that either you're trying to learn more about right now, or you think other marketers need to be learning more about?
It's probably the same thing on everyone's lips at the moment. This world of AI and the new technology that's emerging there has been a big focus for us at Canva. We've really prioritized exploring how that can help people in the design process, and have been launching a whole host of features to bring some of the new technology into the platform. But equally so, we're having some really interesting conversations around what does it open up in terms of possibilities for our marketing approach at scale, and really doing a lot of learning in that space. So that would be one big thing at the moment.
Awesome. And are there brands or companies or causes that you follow or you think other people should take notice of?
Definitely. I think we follow a range of different brands and organizations for different reasons. And I think there's things that you can draw from and sort of learn from everywhere. I'd say in terms of community building, Airbnb's long been a brand that we've admired in terms of that incredible global community, really unified around one shared mission. I think more recently, I actually think it's been amazing watching the growth of OpenAI and how that's sort of taken place. Incredible in terms of largely kind of PR, word of mouth driven
Right.
effort,
Right.
and everything that's come with that. I think it's like the fastest growing platform I think ever. So, I think that's largely been driven through communications and word of mouth. So I definitely think that's a fascinating one to be watching right now too.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's amazing. I mean, you literally cannot get through a news show without hearing something about it.
Yeah.
And specifically about them most of the time. So it's pretty amazing. Well, last question for you. What do you feel is either the largest opportunity or threat facing marketers today?
There was actually some really interesting research that was shared at the Possible event in Miami the other week, and it was some work around the Net Promoter Score for marketing organizations. And so the MMA did this piece of research, which they announced, and the Net Promoter Score for people working in marketing. So basically the question, how likely would you be to recommend a career in marketing? And the NPS was like -2 or something terrible. So I think that's probably the greatest existential threat for marketers, really, and definitely something interesting for the broader industry to be asking, around bringing more talent into this field in particular, and solving for some of those issues that marketing organizations are facing, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you've got 6.8 billion people to go create design with. And I apparently have all the marketers in the world to help convince that marketing is a great place to be. So
yeah, both got
we got our work cut out for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Holy cow. I did not hear that research. That's so depressing in some respects as a marketer through and through, and who hosts a podcast about marketing. So I've definitely got to do some work. What I'm just curious if you remember it, did they have any like causes for it? I mean, obviously like bringing more talent into the field, but just curious if there were any headlines I should know about as I try to work on that.
No, I need to dig into it. It was it was just the top line stat that was shared. But looking forward to sinking my teeth into the research as well.
Well, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I had not seen that yet. Wow. Yes, that's something we got to work on, people. Everyone that's listening to this, work on that, please. We need marketing to survive. At least I would like for it to. Well, Zach, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story and sharing what it's like to do marketing at Canva.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Hi, it's Alan again. Marketing Today was created and produced by me with post-production support from Sam Robertson. If you're new to Marketing Today, please feel free to write us a review on iTunes or your favorite listening platform. Don't forget to subscribe on marketingtodaypodcast.com. Tell your friends and colleagues about the show. I love hearing from listeners. You can contact me at marketingtodaypodcast.com. There you'll also find complete show notes and links to what was discussed in the episode today, and you can search our archives. I'm Alan Hart,